Fowler, and I will be talking about Lab 1. So the premise of this lab is essentially seeing how neutral objects can become charged, and then seeing how charged objects interact with neutral and other charged objects. So we did this by charging a piece of tape by pulling it off another piece of tape. So we had two pieces of tape, the base tape, which was just on the table, and then the U-tape that you just put on top of the base tape and then ripped off. And by ripping the U-tape off the base tape, you transferred charges between the tapes, which turned it from two neutral pieces of tape to one that was positively charged and one that was negatively charged. And then we solved for the charges on the tapes. So the physics principles we used were that like charges repel and opposite charges attract, that neutral matter can become charged when rubbed against other materials, that charged matter polarizes neutral matter, and then we used Coulomb's law, and then that the force due to gravity is the mass times gravity. And then the assumptions we made, we ignored air resistance. We treated tape as though it were a point charge with all the charge concentrated at the center of the tape, and then assumed that each U-tape had the same amount of charge evenly distributed along the length of the tape. And then expectations. So I expected that the piece of U-tape will repel each other because they have like charges, and then that a piece of U-tape will be attracted to neutral objects because charged objects polarize neutral objects and then are attracted to them. And then the results were essentially as expected. The U-tape was attracted to neutral objects such as the book, and then repelled by other U-tapes. And then because it was attracted to a negatively charged pin that I had put in my hair, I made the conclusion that the U-tape is positively charged. So I have a quick video showing how the U-tape was attracted to my hand, which you can see right there. Cool. All right, so section 8 was like the bulk of the lab. So what we did here was I took two U-tapes. It was tape A and tape B. Tape A was below tape B, and tape B was suspended on two books. And then I brought tape A up below tape B, and since they're like charges and they repel, tape A caused tape B to float. And so because tape B wasn't moving, I knew that the force on tape B due to gravity was equal and opposite to the force on tape B due to tape A. So the net force was 0. And then I could solve for the gravitational force acting on tape B by just knowing the mass of tape B. And since tape B was 22.5 centimeters long, I knew it was 0.225 grams, so I could solve for the gravitational force on tape B. And then the separation distance at which tape B began to float, I got was 1.6 centimeters. So I used this equation right here where I assumed, I knew that the magnitude of the force due to tape A was equal to the force due to gravity, and then I just solved for Q, which is the charge on the tape, and I did make the assumption that the tapes had the same charges, which I mentioned earlier. And so then I took the total charge and divided it by the 1.6 times 10 to the negative 19 to find the number of deficient electrons on tape B, and then I found the number of atoms on tape B by taking the surface area of the tape and dividing it by the area of an atom, and so I got this number, 4.275 times 10 to the 17th for the number of atoms on tape B. And then I got the ratio of deficient electrons to the number of atoms to be 1.57 times 10 to the negative 7. So in terms of coding, I treated it a lot like lab 0. I had my constants and my objects and then my functions. I made tape A a red sphere and tape B a blue sphere. And then I made a function called tape charge, which had the parameters tape and distance, where I just essentially did what I did in the last slide where I solved for Q, and then I used the same E field function that I used in lab 0, except I made one small change. I know that the E field isn't the force, so I had to multiply the charge in here again because I know that both tapes have the same charge. So the E field times the charge is the force. So you'll notice that the force and the gravity are equal and opposite, so that worked out very well, and they use the same scale factor. And then, So the final questions to answer is, what if the electrons had a positive charge and protons had a negative charge? I don't think anything would really change because the U-tapes would still repel one another and they'd still be attracted to neutral objects. And then the U-tapes, which are electron deficient, so that would make them negatively charged. And then the pin I put in my hair would now be positively charged, so I think those would still be attracted to one another. So I don't think anything would really change. And then it's really important to handle the charged tapes as little as possible because the charges on the tapes Like by touching the charges on the tapes, you're transferring the charge from the tapes back like to your hands. So now the tapes are neutral and don't really do anything. And also by touching the charged tapes to any other really neutral object, but also transfer the charges and kind of mess it up. So that is all I have. Thanks for watching.